it's your debut album, so that's got to be pretty exciting. But I assume that you. So when did you decide that you were actually making a record? This time line that you just described.
That's a good question. I think it was maybe a few months after the first kind of sessions that I did for it. I had been working on some stuff at home, but I did the first kind of session with the full band,
right?
With Paul Bryan, who engineered it, mixed it, produced it, and it kind of started as like I had a few songs that were like I'm not really sure what these are, if they work, if there's, you know, and it kind of started as like, well, it'd be good to just record them and see what's there and then kind of work from there.
Yep.
So at that point, I was like, I don't know, this might be for something that I put out, or it might just be like a project, you know, something that, I don't know, I didn't really know what it was. But I think much later when I got really busy, and then after things slowed down a bit and I kind of revisited the music, I was like, oh, I actually think the direction is becoming a bit clearer. And there was some music that I was making, you know, at home by myself, or some things that I started kind of adding to those initial recordings that kind of made it clear, like, okay, I think this is a collection of music, you know, that all fits together, and this is a record.
So, and where was it recorded, most likely?
So the stuff that has the full band, that was recorded in LA. This was recorded at Paul Bryan's studio. And so the full band stuff there, a lot of stuff in various places that I've lived since that process started. There's one song that whole part of it was recorded. The drummer Aaron Steele, he no longer lives in LA, but when he did, we did something in his space as well. But the majority was at Paul's place, and then at my house. Yeah.
And what was the vibe like during the sessions? Was it intense? Was it fun? Was it like a mixture of both? How did it happen?
I would say it was fun. It's important that I say that the people, you know, the other three musicians who were on the record are like also some of my closest friends.
Right.
And if anything, I think when we started, I think they were great. I think they were.
Well, that's good. That's a start.
They were pumped and relaxed. I was pumped and not relaxed.
Right.
You know, because it was sort of my thing, and I wasn't really sure what it was yet. So I think, but it was great. I mean, all of the three other musicians and Paul, I mean, were all, you know, I think maybe saw some of the potential in the music earlier than I did, maybe, you know.
Right. Gotcha.
A bit of distance from it, whereas I'm like, well, because
you've done quite a bit of recording otherwise for other people and with other people, so obviously this is a different kind of experience for you, though, being the leader. Yeah,
I imagine it's that way in anything. You know, it's one thing when you show up and you are, you know, contributing in a certain way, but it's different when it belongs to you.
Right. In fact, one of the people that I think you've worked with is Mark DeVries.
Yeah.
Who is also a Kiwi.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So we know him very well back here in New Zealand. So how did you get hooked up with him?
So I moved to LA in 2012 and probably met Mark. I think maybe I had seen him play once or twice, but we kind of started working together in 2014. And I think we had met before, but I think the first time we made music was he had just released an album and had a bunch of shows coming up in LA, and was sort of looking for a horn player. And I had recently played a gig with the really great bass player Tim LaFave, and Tim and Mark knew each other and had done some gigs together. And I think maybe we had played together, maybe a few weeks prior or something like that. And Tim was like, "Oh, you should hit up this dude, Josh." And then that kind of kicked off like a great friendship and a great like musical relationship. The first sort of summer that I worked with him, looking back on it, it's kind of crazy because it was like we probably had he had a bunch of things booked around the release of his album, but also there were a bunch of different residencies that we had in LA. So it felt like for over maybe 3 or 4 months we were playing that music a couple times a week. And then over the years, it's just kind of evolved as different projects have come up, continue to work together. And I don't know, I like that dude a lot. I learn a lot from him.
Cool. Yeah, I was thinking after reading about it, I was like, oh, I have to see what he's up to these days because I haven't heard anything in a little while. So I'm tracking him down.
He's always got music coming out,
Right. Now let's dig into the album a little bit. There's 10 tracks on there. All of them are your compositions, are they?
Yeah, that's correct. There are 2 that started as mostly, they wouldn't have been things that were notated, but directions for improvisation. That were then sort of.
And speaking of improvisation, I read that you're kind of affiliated with the LA improvisational music scene. Is there indeed such a scene? And tell me about it a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, there are a lot of different scenes that involve improvisation in LA.
Right.
I feel, I'm part of a few different communities, I think, that I would describe as improvised music communities in LA. So I would say there's some of that that's rooted in more, jazz,
Yep.
And jazz more explicitly, I would say. And then there's sort of other versions of that mix influences from that with a lot of other music. And I think it's different than other cities in that it's not as centralized, even obviously as a city physically, but also the way that
it's a very spread out place.
Yeah, but I think the way that musical scenes and communities work here, it exists, but it's harder to point to you to one exact place,
Right.
There are a lot of great, musicians in a very rich musical community here.
Cool. So out of the 10 tracks, is there one particular that kind of sets you in motion to make this record?
That's interesting. So, that's a good question. About what came first. I think that maybe one of the first songs was Western Ave.
Yeah.
And I think that one helped to establish a direction for the I would say that one, actually 2 different ones. That one and then the last track, Return the Coil.
Right.
Which that's something that I added to and had, but it started as just me at home. That's something that I made probably before even Western. And interestingly enough, those 2 things, although very different from each other, I think both very much informed the rest of the record.
how did they inform it? What can you tell us about the sound or the musical style that kind of permeates throughout it?
I don't think I've ever really thought about any of this music so explicitly, like
right.
Stylistically. Like I think it's more like it's all coming from a certain place and
right.
A certain feeling to it, which, and part of the whole record is kind of like me reconnecting with the fact that I am interested in a lot of different things musically, and that's something that was true when I first got into music and excited about music, and I didn't really think much of it. You know, it was just like, okay, I play saxophone, I play synths in this, you know, art rock band, you know, I'll make beats occasionally, but I also will like play gospel music. And I think at a certain point, you know, I spent a lot of time kind of like specializing, you know, which I think was necessary and great. And it's sort of part of this record is me coming back around to like, actually this, it's not insignificant that when I got into music, it was through all of these different things at once. And kind of reconnecting with that feeling and understanding that that's actually, that's me, you know, is like all of those things. And so it's hard to say, like, you know, it's not an alchemy, like 10% this genre and 15%.
And plus, you know, you don't want to dissect the music too much because it just gets ugly. You know what I mean? But I will say, not being a musician myself and just being a guy who listens to a lot of stuff, that for me, especially on tracks like 856 and Bowed, the word circular seemed to come to mind about how you kind of play and approach your thing. You can tell me I'm full of crap or whatever.
No, that's definitely, you know, at least a grounding idea for both of those, you know, sort of cyclical and like something evolving without necessarily adding a lot of new, you know, melodic or harmonic information, really, kind of, but still having a feeling of like motion, the forward movement, and trying to figure out how to make that happen in something where some of the, you know, musical elements are static. I'm definitely interested in like this, in that setting specifically, like this kind of spatial reference, and kind of that's something that me and Paul, Brian, I think understand each other on that a lot, and that became it became clear that was a big part of the music too.
Right. And another track that kind of stood out for me was False Choice, which is kind of funkier and some beautiful saxophone playing. Maybe you can just tell me a little bit about that one, how you approached it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of those songs that started a certain way, and then after sitting with it for a long time, being like, this, it's not quite there.
Right.
That's sort of where I think. So that song has a mixture of bass and synth bass, and it started as all electric bass, and there was a certain point where I was working on it, and it was just like, let me see what happens if there's synth bass, and kind of finding the tone and sort of the vibe and feeling of that. It kind of opened up the rest of the song for me. Right. And so that one, I don't know, it's kind of got these two opposing ideas in it, and it's I also knew that I didn't want there to be I didn't want there to be a saxophone solo on it, and I wanted to like experiment a bit with like I don't know, building intensity or building tension just sonically. So there's sort of that middle section where it's kind of just like simmering in this thing and it gets a bit noisy. And I was kind of curious about what, you know, without taking another saxophone solo, like what else could I do to kind of generate some interest in that music. But yeah, I think I mean, I do like to keep some mystery in it. I'm curious about what other people hear in it, you know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like a specific sonic zone for me that I think feels like an important part of the record.
Now, I read somewhere that you had worked as a touring musical director for Leon Bridges. Is that true?
It's true.
And what was that like, and did that have any influence on what you're doing after that?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously touring's not happening right now, but that is in theory still what I do in normal times. But I mean, I love that. I love doing that, and I love working with Leon. He's a very open and creative artist who's very, very interested in kind of pushing himself and being pushed. And yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot in that setting, because I think it's they're different priorities in some ways, you know, and I think being intentional and choosing the thing that you believe is the right thing to happen is really, really important in that music, you know. There's not a lot of room for excess. And I think that working in that context and kind of playing in that situation, I'm never a soloist, which is sort of like one of my sort of continuing struggles with saxophone. Is like, as much as I love it, I enjoy being involved in music in a role other than like soloist, you know, or other than being in the foreground, you know, or like, you know, I'd love to contribute to the feel or you know, like do other things, something that doesn't necessarily shine a spotlight on me. And I think that my role with Leon is sort of rooted in that. Actually, it's like part of my job is, you know, it's preparing the band, you know, coming up with arrangements and things like that, but it's also really like listening and playing as a listener, like paying attention to what's missing, what needs to happen, and if there's something that I can play that contributes that thing, that's what I should play. So I think that sort of being in that world and that playing from that space, there's definitely a lot of that comes back into my own music and to, you know, improvising with other people.
Right. Cool. So the record came out last Friday. You're stuck in LA in lockdown mode. What's the next few weeks, months looking like for you? Do you have any plan? Are you able to plan anything? Think about what you'd like to be doing?
It's hard to plan things live.
Yeah, you know? I hear you.
But I'm still trying to figure it out. You know, I would love to do something live.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's an outdoor thing in LA or something like that. I'm not, you know, for me, it doesn't feel like doing, you know, I could do a solo set at home, which is not to knock that or anybody who's doing that, but it doesn't quite feel like it feels sort of disconnected from this music that was just released.
Right.
So short answer is I don't know. And still
Fair
trying to
enough.
figure out, you know, a way to, I mean, I think that's what we're all trying to figure out at this moment. It's like, how do we present music right now?
Yeah. And have you been writing? Have you been practicing? Have you been just sitting around watching TV? What have you been up to? You know,
A little bit of all those things. You know, there have been seasons definitely to this time, but yeah, I've been writing a lot. I'm well on my way, at least in terms of sketches of what will be
cool.
The next record. You know, so yeah, this time has been. It's weird to say it's been nice, but it's given me some space to experiment, you know, and to you know, to walk in the room every day and try to work on an idea that's interesting to me and see where it can go.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's going to be this huge burst of creativity when you guys are all let loose on the world again. It's going to be amazing for us. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think people. Yeah, I hear you. I think there's going to be a lot at once. You know.
Yeah.
And I also think people will be ready for it too. You know.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we just got out of lockdown over the weekend here in New Zealand, and already I've been to like 5 concerts. You know.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, it's a beautiful thing. Well, thank you very much for spending time with me and talking to me about this record. It's a fantastic record. Hope people will come out and at least buy it. And is it out on vinyl?
It's a little bit delayed, but yes, it will be out.
Good. All right. It sounds like the kind of record we want to put on the turntable.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.